Hey, welcome to Mama Mandala. I'm Hagar. I'm glad to have this moon moment with you. It's a full moon in Capricorn. It's the second full moon in Capricorn this season. The first one was on the summer solstice, winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. So it's a blue moon, and a blue moon gives us that reminder of a rare gift, right? We use the term blue moon, once in a blue moon, to mean something that is rare. And it kind of makes me think of how rare and incredibly precious the gift of life is. And the gift of life really sits at the center and at the core of the archetype of Capricorn, which is the sign the moon is full in, and the archetype of the mother, which is Cancer, and that's the season we are in, the lunar cycle that this moon is full of is the lunar cycle that began in Cancer. It began with this nourishing, nurturing, mothering, caregiving energy. And the Capricorn meets the mother in her moment when she is ready to give birth. So we have, it's sort of like, we can think of how, okay, maybe you've been in labor for a really long time with something, with a project, with a relationship, with something you're working on in yourself. And this blue moon, this second visit with this archetype, with these archetypes together, gives us the opportunity to maybe it's been like this long process of laboring, of birthing, and now we are entering that phase of pushing, of letting it come out of us, allowing it to be born into the world. So you can give yourself some time during these next couple of days with the full moon to ask yourself, what is it that you are bringing into the world? What are you birthing into the world? And how can you, in that Capricorn fashion, help, support, guide, and coach yourself in that process of birthing? Now, what's really beautiful about both of these archetypes that we are playing with in the full moon, I love full moon for many reasons, but one of the reasons on that mythic archetypal level is that it gives us, because we are in a season, the sun is in a certain sign, in a certain playing and dancing with a certain archetype, and then the moon is full in the sign that is on the opposite side of the axis. So it's this mirror and opportunity to play with things that reflect one another, and that maybe complete one another, not in the way of a finished business, but in the way of adding more layers, right? When you play with two archetypes at the same time and you weave together a fabric of yourself with two, moving with both, you are able to create more depth, because it's not just one thing, but it's two things. And whenever we have two things, we actually have three, because we have the relationship, which creates a new reality. So we have this opportunity, this gift, this moment to play with the capacity to nourish and nurture and give life and grow life and nurse it and hold it, and then allow it to become its own being, right? Just like when we are parents, we give birth to our children, and we nurture them and we nourish them, but they are their own. So it's that ability to keep caring and to keep caregiving, and allow the art project, allow the child to have their own being, evolving and cultivated in the world and becoming more than you, right? Our children come through you, but they're not yours. That's something a lot of parents have a hard time with, right? Because we love them so much, we just want the best for them, and we just want to hold them, right? So that's like that it can lead into the shadow aspect of the mother, which is suffocation, right? And then the other shadow is neglect, right? How do you give them breath and life without suffocating? how do you give them freedom without so much risk that you endanger them. So there's always that play, right? And with Capricorn, we have this archetype, this character that is in some ways thought of very much. It's often spoken of in the astrological books as someone who is restrained and someone who is very disciplined. The ruling planet is Saturn, so there's a lot of restraint and discipline and cautiousness. But they also walk, because the symbol of Capricorn, the symbol is a goat, but it's actually a sea goat. So there's the depth of the tail of the fish that rises from the ocean. It reminds us of our own originating place. It reminds us of the source of life. And Capricorn is a resourceful character. It's the part of us that knows which parts of us to gather as we move ourselves on the dangerous and through the kind of precarious rocky terrain of the mountain. They go to the top of the mountain. They reach for the summit. And one of the gifts of Capricorn is not only their own ambition, not only the capacity and the ability to bring a dream into reality, to fashion and form and give flesh to a vision, to a spark, to an inspiration, to a desire, but also to become that person in the community, that the person in the community that can see the gifts of others and help them bring those gifts, those talents, those capabilities to the light and support them and become guides and allies in the process of others building what they envision and rising up the summit, right? So it's like that teacher, the teacher that guides somebody else on that rocky terrain toward the top of the mountain. So we have this I think it's beautiful to consider, because nowadays in the modern world, let's just kind of talk about it in this way. In the modern world, ambition is something that's very much celebrated, and it has been celebrated in a very patriarchal kind of a way. If we look at where we are in our day and age and where we come from in the last 2,000 years, so ambition is very much a quality that's associated with masculinity, and so in the last few years, as many of us have been, I want to say battling, but it's not battling. We have been breaking down the patriarchy, bringing it the fuck down, and working on bringing something new that isn't so male and masculine oriented, but also feminine. And we're thinking about and feeling into and creating new pathways, new ways of being that are less hierarchical, right? We have the Capricorn reaching toward the top. It's a very hierarchical kind of a model and a way of thinking of life, and thinking of ambition as this thing that takes us up, right? Climbing up. We have that goat that walks that rocky terrain of the mountain toward the summit. So we have the ability now that we've become so much more aware of what the patriarchy has done and where we are in the world because of it, to cultivate more feminine encoded, it's not a gender thing, but more feminine encoded ways of being. And I love the way that the Capricorn isn't only rising to the top on their own, but that one of their strengths as an archetype is to lead others to the top. What a beautiful thing. Now, here's another kind of thing to consider when we think of Capricorn, is that their disciplined and restrained kind of character is the goat. And the goat is not a very metaphorically and mythically thinking, it's not a restrained character. The goat, and even physically, if we think biologically, the goat eats anything and everything, right? So there is this underlying current of hunger, which is a symbol of desire. Put the desire in a patriarchal way, it'll lead you in one direction, very clear one. Put the desire in a feminine way, and the masculine is going to want to, in a patriarchal world, control it, right? Now, Capricorn is very much associated with a sense of control, of self preservation, and of the ability to really not get out of line. And at the same time, the goat is a character that does. The goat is a little bit of a trickster. The goat has horns. The goat, therefore, is, you named it, horny, right? The goat is also it's coming to symbolize a character such as Pan, who is, interestingly, related to the sign of Capricorn. So Capricorn is restrained, but then you have a relationship with Pan, who is a character of wildness. It's the wildness of nature. It's primal desire. It's the way that we are, in some ways, not in control of ourselves, not in control of nature, not in control of our own nature, right? So what are we? We have a way to bring this into relationship, bring the wildness and out of control sexuality of a character such as Pan, and that even violates boundaries of sexuality in a way that is harmful. You can look at the mythology and see the way that Pan's wildness is out of control of. So he ends up raping, and so there's the shadow of that. And I'm thinking of the way that when we look at our wildness and our untamed parts through the lens of restraint and suppression of our primal urges, it actually creates an dangerous, shadowy territory where it's something that bubbles under the surface and then becomes out of control. It's in charge of us. But when we turn toward it, and when we bring discipline to our relationship with our wildness, then we are able to cultivate something that is respectful, that is beautiful, that is not suppressing our primal desire, but utilizing it, using it, loving on it, giving it boundaries to live within so that it doesn't override us. So underneath the surface of the Capricorn character, that is, it's a businesswoman. She is in charge. She's in control. She's rising and bringing other with her. And what she thinks about, we can think of a character such as Athena, the Greek goddess, who is one of her energies is to be her father's daughter, and she is very masculine in her characters. And then and she's kind of like, if you bring her into modern day world, she's very much of a business person. And so you have that associated with Capricorn because of that restraint, because of that ambition, and because of that capacity to bring a vision into reality and guide ourselves in that direction. And then you have a character, again, just to play with the Greeks, because we have we have in this conversation with the Greek characters, ancient Greek characters. So you have Artemis, who is the goddess of the hunt and the goddess of the moon, and there's a wildness to that nocturnal energy, and she's also a woman who's onto herself. She's not married, she's not partnered, she's not consorted, and she's a hunter. She's the goddess of the hunt, and she is also a goddess associated with childbirth. So we can kind of bring her into that process, into that conversation. And she is also, both Athena and Artemis have very problematic aspects to them. Both of them can end up in the mythology punishing the aspects of themselves that are more wild, that maybe are even sometimes the victim of something horrible that happened. So they tend to punish the victim. So we have these problematic characters as a reminder that so are we. And I want to bring that up into this moment with Capricorn, especially because we have another opportunity with this archetype, is that we are not in control of ourselves, but we have agency and a capacity to guide ourselves. Capricorn wants to be in control and is associated with self-mastery, but we are never going to fully master ourselves. Good thing, because we are an unfinished art project. We are never going to be finished. It's never going to be done. We're always going to have more work to do, and that's a good thing. And when we think that we have mastered ourselves, we run the very dangerous zone of tyranny, because if we think that we are fully accomplished, then not only do we have nowhere to go from here, but we start to think that we are immune. And whenever we think we are immune, or wherever someone in the world has too much power, too much immunity in any way, shape, or form, authoritarianism rises. We have this danger of, again, it's that suppression of the wildness. We don't see, or maybe we do and we choose to ignore it, what the dangers are. And then it becomes authoritarianism. It becomes a certainty that is oppressive, and that is suppressing the natural ways of life. So in a character, in an archetype such as the Capricorn with it, which helps us build structures that give us the ability to bring into the world something and form it and bring into real life the dreams and the desires that we have. We want to make sure that we leave room for the wild, that maybe there is a capacity to have this great discipline that has to have a window open for the wild winds to flow through. We don't fully tame the beast of who we are, because if we fully tame the beast that we are, who we are, we just think that we did. And then if we think that we did, we start to think that we are above nature or above others. To see how that can be dangerous. So we work with the wild, and we need a way. I'm not one of those people. I am definitely in the process of embodying and getting in touch with and cultivating the wildness of my being. I don't think I've ever not been wild, but we're in the process also as a society, at least some of us who are interested in this kind of work, in the process of rewilding ourselves, of bringing the feminine encoded, the non-binary, of the mythic and of nature into our conversation, into how we're living. We want to move a little bit. A lot of us want to move a little bit away from only hierarchical. Now, it's not to completely destroy and let go and dismantle the value that comes with knowing also how to go up. But we want to remember that in this universe, up is just, it's just a construct that we have because of gravity, because we're on a planet. But as soon as you leave the planet, the Earth is not down or up, right? Like there's no up and down in space, and we're always in space. So we always hold the paradox of being, of having down and up and not having down and up. Both are true. There's more than one truth. And that's very much, I think every archetype in astrology invites us to find where the paradox is and to hold it rather than resolve it. Because I know a lot of us really want a resolution. We want to know, oh, I want to know that Capricorn is this. But then what's the underlying current? What's the teacher inside of it? And Capricorn is a teacher presence. It wants to guide us. And if something is a guiding power in us and in the world around us, it needs to have a more well-rounded, moonful kind of an approach, right? So if we are in the process of bringing in more of the wild, we want to make sure that we're not destroying the aspects of civilization that have been valuable, right? As a parent, my job is to make sure that my kids are civilized, because we live in a society and there are other people around and there are other species around. I don't want them to just move around the world thinking they can do whatever the beep they want, right? Like, no. So my job is to civilize them. However, civilization, as we know, also has a big shadow to it. And there's a lot of problematic, and civilization of the Western world has been built on the backs of destroying indigeneity and coming at the world and on the backs of slavery, right? And coming at the world in a way that is very oppressive. So how do we marry, weave, commingle the wild with the one that can move the wisdom of our species into a place, into a relationship, into a connection with other species that is rooted in respect and in support of one another. So I know this is light and fluffy, as I like to keep it, but this moon is this invitation to find a way, to define, to create, to nourish the structures that are going to help us in creating what we want to create in our lives and in the world, supporting others in doing the same. And that requires discipline. That requires a way of being somewhat in charge, right? Moving things in a way that is thoughtful and careful and with caution. And how do we not suppress others? How do we actually bring others up with us? How do we not suppress the wild? How do we let the wild continue to breathe life in the process of creating and moving the civilized? And one more little point, when we look at the history of this sign all the way back to Babylonian time, it was a sea goat. So it's not just a goat, but it's a sea goat. And it began with a character, a god, a deity named, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, so it's either Ea or Ea, it's E-A, Ea or Ea. And that's a Babylonian god who wore a cloak of the skin of a fish, and who was also called the antelope of the subterranean realms. So he was a goat antelope character and a sea character. He came from the rivers, from the water, and rose from the depth of of what's the underlying current beneath the surface to bring civilization to humans, to bring the wisdom that with which they can create civilization. So how do we pull on the wisdom of nature? Capricorns, one of their greatest gifts is knowing how to utilize tools. How do we pull on the wisdom of nature in us, around us, and work with it in a way that isn't harming it? Because harming it is harming us. Harming somebody else is going to harm us. Harming other species is harming our species. So how do we learn to live in reciprocity? How do we become disciplined in the way that we live in relationship to other beings, to other species, to other humans? How do we bring discipline into it that doesn't suppress the creative, impulsive, life-filled, primordial energy? How do we bring the wisdom of the primal through discipline into a way that we live our lives that can help what we envision and want for ourselves and for others to come into fruition? So light and fluffy, my friends. This is where we are in a process of always making it easy to digest here. I hope this is somewhat interesting for you. I hope that this is evocative for you. I hope that this brings something of nourishment to your life. And if it does, share it with your friends, will you? Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And put a like on this video. Yeah, it helps other people find it. And please head over to mamamandala.com and subscribe to our mailing list there. I'm going to leave a link for you in the description of the video so that you can do that easy peasy. And there's a lot of beautiful things coming up, so I would love for you to be a part of it. And I am so excited that I got to have this moment with you. So hopefully it's interesting, and I can't wait to hang out next time. Thank you for joining me. Mwah.